What's up, crew? Hope you're having a rad day. In this episode, you're going to hear a bird in the background, and we're going to talk to a bunch of famous mountain bikers. I'm Alan, and this is the MTB Alan channel. I'm Alan, this is the MTB Alan channel, and 2020 has been a year to remember. There have been a lot of ups and downs, but by the way, if you hear a bird, it's because there's a cockatiel on my back. Yeah, that's the way I can keep him quiet. His name is Professor, so, Professor will be chiming in from time to time. So yeah, thinking back over this year, there have been a lot of ups and downs, but I've been stoked to have been able to share my experience with you these last 52 weeks. Has it been 52 episodes? Wow. If it has, that's a lot of episodes. And looking back and getting some perspective on the year, obviously the pandemic was the main theme of the year, but what was salient for me was what the pandemic brought out in people. So for my retrospective this year, I thought I would share with you 5 conversations I had with some rad people. You probably know all or at least some of these people, and if you don't, it is my pleasure to introduce them to you. I sat down with Shane TheCrashingDad, Eric from BCpov, Joseph from TrailFeatures, Leigh Donovan, and last but certainly not least, Jason Richardson. All of these mountain bikers have had an influence on me, and I was honored that they were willing to sit down and talk with me for a little while. I have a ton of great content from these conversations, so many gems, but I didn't want to make this a 6-hour episode, so I'll be sharing just one highlight from each of those conversations. That being said, I will be sharing longer form versions of each of these interviews, so do hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss out on those. All right, grab a beverage or set that cruise control, sit back, relax, and enjoy. First up is Shane TheCrashingDad. In my book, the nicest mountain bike YouTuber. He's also respectably gnarly and is embarrassed by nothing except I don't know if he's embarrassed by anything. If you happen to know what he's embarrassed by, please let me know in the comments. Like I said, with everybody else, there were a ton of things that we talked about. We had a lot of laughs, a lot of good times while we talked. But what I want to share with you today is the beginning of the pandemic, Shane's experience as a essential worker in the grocery store world, and toilet paper advice. Okay, first off, thank you for doing this. I know you are a busy person.
My pleasure, Broseph. Pointing at the other camera, the real camera.
Yeah, I'll point out the other one. Yeah, so just a little recap, kind of what we talked about a little bit before in the chat. That I know there's been a number of podcasts that I've listened to, like specifically like cycling, mountain biking podcasts, and like COVID keeps coming up. And we don't talk about it. Yeah, it's like, exactly, don't talk about it. But then it keeps coming up. But I mean, I think like it's affected everybody's lives, on the trail, off the trail.
Yeah.
And, as we're like into the holiday season, I think a lot of people, a lot of us aren't able to see our families and whatnot. And so I thought it'd be maybe cool to just have a few conversations about stories or how COVID has affected you, the good, the bad, all those kind of things. And just stories that we can share and that our community can, would just maybe enjoy hearing.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess we could start from like, what you and I physically met in February, right? Was that February or March?
I don't remember. It was the Sedona Mountain Bike Festival.
Yeah.
And I remember Paul was like, he was like backing off. Oh, nope, coronavirus, it's coming. And at that point, it was not a real thing here. Like maybe we had 1 or 2 cases in the United States. And I remember like people like, hey, it's the Crashing Dad. I'd be like, screw the coronavirus, and I'd like shake people's hands. You and I met, we like gave each other hugs. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I was there for work. I do grocery. And I remember like the last day of the festival, suddenly my store was out of toilet paper. And it was like, it just started, like the switch flipped and it just started to hit. And then I came back home and was like, I was just at a festival with people from all over the United States, in Arizona, which like started to blow up. And then like every single little sniffle or headache or anything, I was just like, oh crap. And at that point too, like I'm technically in an essential business. It was like, or industry. We couldn't get masks. And I remember, and they were like, well, we don't even know if masks work. This is before they had determined everything. I remember like telling my boss, it's like, I don't feel so great. And he was just like, well, why don't you just go get tested? And at that point too, he said it as a joke, because it was like, oh, wear a mask and go get tested, because at that point there was no testing available. It was just like, it wasn't real. And then suddenly the best days of 2020 for us was over.
Right.
And then like smack dab into coronavirus,
For those listeners who don't know, just give a quick like summary of like what you do for work, because like I think that's important to your story there.
Oh, well, so I grew up in grocery. I ran stores in Utah, and now I'm kind of like an area sales representative or area manager over Colorado stores for our independent grocery supply. And I also happen to have Moab and Sedona, Arizona. Poor me. I have to go there for work every once in a while.
Terrible.
Boo-hoo. Yes, it is terrible. But, we're in the stores every single day. And the store suddenly became like the battleground for the maskers and the anti-maskers. And, we had people too in Denver, like the little cashier up front, like, hey, sir, will you please wear a mask? He gets all pissed, goes back to his car, brings a gun back in, and like starts shooting people. Like that happened in Denver and other places too. So we had to like tell people like, yes, like maybe we have to put a sign at the front of the door, maybe ask them, but we're not going to enforce that shit. Like it gets real fast. And I don't know, it's tough too, because it has really brought out the worst in people. Like I guess it comes down to the mask thing. Like for us, obviously, policy, regardless of our beliefs, our policies, we are traveling all over the state and sometimes into different states. We wear a mask because we could possibly pick something up and bring it into a county or a state that it might not be real to them yet. And I don't want to bring that to them, but in a lot of these places too, people are coming, no mask. Hey, your new shelves look great. And it's like, I have no idea, the mask doesn't protect me. So I'm exposed everywhere I go. So there's always been this like daunting feeling of like, well, no matter how much I try to protect myself, like I'm probably going to get it. And I have had to get tested once testing was more available, and I tested negative, so I haven't gotten it yet. But it's always just kind of a stress in the back of my head, because like, am I going to get it today? Some people, they might be trying, and they wear the mask with we call it the face penis. It's like your penis hanging over your pants, and your pants are going to protect anyone else from you peeing on them. Like, and I get it. Like they're making an effort, but it's just like, well, okay, like that's not doing its thing. It's just, and grocery, as we know, has been crazy busy. Right. There's rushes on all sorts of cleaning products and canning and, canned goods. We've had to source other sources for these things. So might not see the normal things on your shelves, but it's like, we're busy. So we're out there working. And I don't know. We don't get to just hunker down like everyone else. I do get to work from home sometimes, but we're out there, man. It sucks. And I haven't been mountain biking as much because of it. Sorry, I just went on a huge grocery tangent. No, shows about mountain biking. I haven't touched my bike in like 2 weeks.
Wow. And I'm sure during like the great toilet paper scare of 2020, you weren't really riding much either.
No, I wasn't. Funny thing is too, like we had gotten down to like 2 rolls, maybe 3 rolls left in the house when that whole thing happened. And I was like, yeah, the supply chain's good. It's no big deal. And my mom, she's like, oh, we have our cases. And she comes from Salt Lake City, Utah, which is very Mormon. And their whole deal is like stock up. So she's like, I have my food storage. I have a pallet of toilet paper. And I was like, you're not going to need that. It's no big deal. And I remember going, it's like, oh, we need toilet paper. We couldn't get it. I'd go back the next time. We need toilet paper. We couldn't get it. And then I remember like going to one of my stores the day that they got their load. I was like, hey, did you get any toilet paper allocated to you? And I went back and like, they were like, yeah, you can have this one. And they were saving it for like their dedicated customers that come in. So I brought home that roll of toilet paper. And then when toilet paper like kind of let off and it was readily available, that's when we had finally run out of those last rolls, and then had to crack into the one that I bought secretly. But it was like, I didn't really need to buy that toilet paper out of the back room right off the truck, because our toilet paper would have lasted through till when it was readily available. I don't know. It's just...
We had this whole conversation at the office, and this was like just before like they shut the offices down. Like it was right after coming back from Sedona, and like you said, that toilet paper scare like happened at that point. And we had this whole conversation in the office of like, what's your method? Like, are you a folder or are you a water? Are you a hand wrapper? Like, because like if you're anything but a folder, like you have to become a folder now.
Yeah. Well, okay. So Lowe's, they totally had sourced this like bamboo 3-ply toilet paper, all natural, no butt crumble. They had sourced this different toilet paper, and I think they're clearancing it out because it was one of those things like, oh, we can get this, let's bring it in and sell toilet paper. And we bought some just because we weren't hoarding, because I don't like to live that way, but it got to the point where we needed toilet paper. So we bought some of this bamboo stuff. I'm actually pretty interested in stuff like that. But this bamboo toilet paper, there's like a scrub yourself clean side that's a little bit more frictiony, and then there's like a soft finish you off side. And I have come to find, okay, I'm lactose intolerant, as well as some other things that make it so that I live a very frustrating bowel movement lifestyle. That being said, this organic bamboo toilet paper, I only need maybe 3 squares. Yeah, like 3 squares to start off with to get the like wreckage out of the way. And then that folds, and then I get a little bit more, and then maybe 2 more squares of that. It's like this bamboo stuff. If you haven't tried bamboo toilet paper, recommended by the Crashing Dad himself. No, seriously, it's like that's great. I'll go in and I'm like, oh, 2 squares, great. I'm good. This is lasting forever. I'm not going to need to buy toilet paper in a long time. And then my son goes, he's wiping his own ass now. It's like, how kids, they just, he goes through a crap ton and the toilet's full of it and clogging the toilet. And I go in, he's like, is it clean? He's bent over. Will you make sure it's clean? It's like, dude, you just used half a roll of this toilet paper and it's bamboo. I mean, I guess being bamboo, it lasts longer.
Yeah. Is it more expensive?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just like anything else that's natural, organic bamboo.
Yeah. I'll have to, you'll have to send me a link at some point.
I'll have to find it. I've run into other people that like have tried it and used it as well. Exact same experience where like we're having this huge bonding session over, yeah, you only need 3 squares and it feels so great. There's a scrub side. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I think it's funny that there's like a different grit depending on what side it is.
Yeah. It's brilliant actually. Like really get in their side and then finish yourself off nice and soft side.
Finish off the polishing side.
Yeah. You're getting way more than you asked for tonight. No, I'm sorry.
This is why I asked you on. This is why I asked you on. Next up is Joseph from TrailFeatures. Joseph and I met at the Sedona Mountain Bike Festival, and I've enjoyed talking with him ever since. He's a really thoughtful guy, always has really deep insights, and I always really appreciate that. The highlights from his conversation are about dealing with stress, anxiety, and depression during the pandemic, and I think just kind of in general, as well as some of the positive stuff that he's hoping to see come out of the pandemic.
I like to think of myself as a extroverted introvert or an introverted extrovert. I love being around people to a point. When my batteries drain, I'm done. Like, I just want to unplug. I just want to go away. I don't want to talk to anyone. And I will sit in a dark room staring at a TV for hours to recharge. But then, like, same thing. When the batteries are full, I got to get out. And, how it's affecting me personally is it sucks. Like, I have a lot of friends that I'm chatting with, and like, I would love to go grab some food with them. I would love to be able to do big group rides again. I would, and then go have food afterwards and hang out and throw parties. I mean, I'm 35, so party is a relative term now. It's like, it's 9:30, guys. I'm going to go to bed. Got a lot to do next Sunday. But no, it does affect me. I'd be lying if I didn't say that I was a little bit depressed, a little sad, anxious, nervous, scared. There's a lot of unknowns happening right now. 2020 was kind of a perfect storm of everything.
Yeah. What are you doing to deal with some of that stress and anxiety and depression?
That's a great question. I've been trying to figure out stuff, I used to joke about having a dad bod, and now, I definitely do have the dad. I got the quarantine figure going on.
So you had a bit of complication that kept you off the bike a bit, right?
The very condensed version is I've always had these weird arrhythmias, but a couple of years ago, I wasn't feeling right. I was under a lot of stress with a new job, just moved to Colorado from Texas. And like, I was also running on caffeine and stress, so that's never good. To the point, I talked to my doctor about it, that I was having these weird skip beats and just feeling unwell. And he's like, well, you know what? Let's get you in front of a cardiologist and see what they say. And the cardiologist at first was like, yeah, let's throw a event monitor on you. It's just this thing that sits on your chest and monitors your heart rhythm for 30 days. Got a phone call one morning where the nurse was like, hey, how are you feeling? I'm feeling okay. You sure you didn't have any problems sleeping last night? It's like, I don't think so. Why? It's like, well, your heart stopped for like almost 10 seconds.
Wow.
Okay, well, I think it just stopped again, because that's some pretty intense news to get at 9 a.m. in the morning. Long story short, they have decided that I'm okay. But during that time, there were moments where they're like, don't do anything, because they were telling me that I was okay and then I could start working out again. And I started working out, and I was on Zwift, and I pushed myself too hard. And I had these really weird skipped beats where like I was running at full tilt. Like I was really trying to push my limits. So this was an extreme scenario, but at the same time, they were like, okay, if that's happening, that's not good. And that was when they ordered more tests. And now from that, they've decided, you know what? You're not 20 anymore. You're not going to be a triathlete. So ease up on the training and you should be fine. We don't need to worry about a pacemaker, which is one thing they were talking about. Don't need to worry about surgery or medication. So because of that, I was on and off the bike, and it's really hard to stay in shape, and exercise is a big part of staying sane. So yeah, you kind of get stuck in this hole. And for a while there, it was really bad. I couldn't go outside because, they started talking about all the complications from the virus, that it can cause cardiac issues. Well, I already had some, so I didn't need that. And then my doctor's telling me I can't ride. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm just kind of stuck here. So yeah, it was rough. And, a big part of it was leaning heavily on friends, on my girlfriend. She put up with a lot. And, finding those older outlets, video games. I got back into that for a while. And just finding new things that make you happy. I got into 3D printing, It was so much fun. I got to tinker over this thing that was constantly broken and I didn't understand how it worked. It was perfect. Like I just kind of got to obsess over something other than my health. And like I could figure it out and I could fix it. And all that feeling of not being able to do anything about this was, funneled into that. And, it was nice. So those are things that I found is just taking all that anxious energy. First off, identifying that it's there, because a lot of people try to squish that down like it's not happening. You should really embrace it and, understand what it is, where it's coming from, but then finding a healthy way to deal with it.
That's great. Yeah, because that can so easily be aimed at your significant other or coworkers or
divorce lawyers probably had a very busy year.
A lot of legal consultations through Zoom.
Yeah, a lot of couples counseling.
It's crazy. Have you been able to get back on the trail?
Yeah, so my buddy James, JF Rides, he lives here in Colorado as well. And he's like, hey, let's go on a gravel ride. I was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. And so we went this crazy 40-mile gravel ride. I swear I almost died, but it was great. Like, I don't regret it. The last 5 miles, maybe I might have said some curse words in that moment, but at the end of it, I was really happy that I did it because, as we said, exercise is so great.
Yeah.
And it's just fun, when you do mountain bike content on YouTube all the time, you forget to just, have some time for yourself, let those thoughts kind of melt out of your brain and just zone out for a little bit, not think about anything at all.
Oh, I feel you. So gravel, I'm still trying to get my head around it. Can you sell it to me a little bit?
Gravel is the best type of mountain biking that mountain bikers don't know about.
Interesting.
Let me explain. So the nice thing about gravel biking is that it has a very low point of entry. You find just some old country road, you get on your bike and you just start riding and exploring. And there's a lot of stuff to see out there in the country. We rode past a bear sanctuary where they had grizzly bears, brown bears, black bears, all climbing around and doing all these things. And they're huge. And it's just out there in the middle of, nowhere, Colorado. And we rode past that. And like there was little vents, like they had these tarps over the fence to kind of cut down on wind and, hide the public, as much public as there is out there, from the bears. So like we're poking our faces through these holes, like, look at the bear. And, like 3 grown men acting like children for like 15 minutes was so awesome. And those are the things that you kind of miss. And it's super low intense. One great thing about mountain biking is that, you can push your limits, you challenge yourself, and it's so fun and so exhilarating. But that can also be a detriment at times. There are days where you're just kind of burnt out. You're not feeling it. Maybe you're kind of not really feeling that confidence because you just got over a crash. But the great thing is you can build up a ton of fitness. Like 40 miles sounds like a lot, but when you're talking like flat gravel roads, I mean, you can go 20 miles, even if you're like slightly in shape, because it's all about pacing yourself, making sure that you stop and take breaks. It's not a race. Like gravel is all about the experience. Don't do it alone, because half the fun is bringing people along so you can just talk. You're at a casual pace. You're not going for a KOM. You're just grinding up this road and you're chatting with your friends.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense, because like I think when I'm on like my enduro bike, I want to ride the way the bike wants to be ridden.
It's fun. I definitely recommend it. I think too many people kind of diss on it because they're like, ooh, what's those weird curvy bars? And do I have to wear spandex? Like, no, wear whatever you want. No one cares. There's no wrong way to do gravel grinding. That's the best part about it. No one cares. Nice. For me, the reason why I don't care what type of bike I'm on, I just love that sensation of gliding. I love mountain biking for the chunder, but like if I can have that magic carpet ride type vibe as I'm exploring a city, that's my zen right there.
Yeah. See, I like the glide over the chunder.
Got to get those super enduro with like 160, 160.
There you go. So like, what are you looking forward to in 2021?
I mean, a lot of stuff that we've already covered, just getting back out, seeing friends, family, and the quote unquote normal that we all want back. Get out there, experience life again, enjoy what you have instead of what you want. The upswing of all of this is like we have all of this shared experience, right? The whole world has experienced COVID. We've all been impacted by it in some ways. So when we finally go back to normal, we're all going to be on basically the same page. We're going to go out to movies again. We're going to go out to eat. We're going to go see friends and family. We're going to be able to enjoy life, and we're going to have a huge appreciation for it. So while it's terrible, all of the heartache that's happening right now, there is a silver lining that on the other side of it, there's going to be a whole new appreciation for what we have.
Yeah, I feel that. I hadn't thought about it till you said that, but yeah, I can really feel that. I'm looking forward to that too.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I mean, ice cream is going to taste awesome.
Ice cream with friends.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Joseph, thank you so much for taking the time to do this, and for sharing your experience, and being a little bit vulnerable for the audience. I really appreciate it. So yeah, hopefully soon we'll get to fist bump and ride together, huh?
Definitely. I'm looking forward to going out to Sedona again. I'm looking forward to going out to Sedona again. Bellingham. I want to get up to Canada, and just get out and ride. It'll be fun.
Yeah, it'll be good. Cool. Thanks, Joseph.
No problem, man.
Next up is Leigh Donovan. Leigh is a former World Cup DH racer. She's now a mountain bike coach, brand ambassador, all around rad lady. Hopefully she'll be a future coach for me. We discussed a whole bunch of things like everybody else, but we're going to concentrate on how she discovered something new about what she does and has reignited her passion. We also have a cool conversation about how the nature of mountain bikers has made the pandemic a bit easier.
I have to say, I've never done so many private instructional clinics ever. I mean, I've done 5 times the amount of private clinics I've done this year than I've ever done in a year.
Wow.
It's been amazing.
That's crazy.
And I've met a lot of really neat people locally, which has been super cool.
That's rad.
Yeah.
That's really cool. What's the difference? Like if you could nail down the difference in dynamic when you're working with somebody privately versus a clinic?
Well, I have to say that I never liked doing private clinics because I was so used to doing events and I really practiced at it. So I kind of dreaded always, and I would get privates, 12, 14 private clinics, one-on-one a year. But they weren't my favorite. And it's interesting how it's transitioned this year to being really my only business. I've done some at Sky Park, but not many. And I love it now. Now it's more not that I get to do a ton more riding, but I do get to ride a little more in my classes than I did before. And it's more just, I think, because I'm at home a lot and I'm not getting the opportunity to socialize as much as I would like to. It does give me that outlet to meet new people, to socialize. And most of the people that come there, they want to talk about mountain bikes. And well, I freaking love mountain bikes. So I want to talk about that. And so it's like my kid don't want to talk about mountain bikes. I mean, my husband does, but he's busy working all the time. So it's kind of fun.
That's rad.
Yeah,
That's
I love
really
it.
Cool. So it sounds like you discovered that you loved something that you used to really not like.
Well, and to be honest, I really didn't think you could have a business doing that. I didn't think that I could do private instruction 3 times a week. I just didn't foresee that being possible. I didn't know that that was something that was desired. And I do think optimizing my search engine and people being able to actually find me made me realize that that is possible, and that, you know, maybe there's a future for me to do less travel and impact more locally, which I definitely will welcome, probably.
Totally. So you talked a little bit about how, you know, you kind of discovered that you like private coaching. You didn't used to like it. Is there anything else that, you know, this pandemic has got you reflecting on, got you rethinking or rediscovering or new stuff in your life?
I mean, I'm that type of ponderer anyways. Like, I'm always thinking about, you know, what am I going to do next? What's my future look like? I'm like that person that's super annoying, that's always like, what's your 5-year plan? And those sort of things. My husband and I are totally polar opposites. And so I'm that person anyways. So I think that, you know, I got a book about like your next steps, and I'm reading that. Like, what are you going to do next? And where do you fit, you know? But I think that I actually was kind of on the fence of continuing I Choose Bikes and doing these skill clinics. Just, I know I'm not old, but, you know, I turned 49, and then you start to think, okay, do people still want to learn from a 50-year-old girl, right? Like, I know that sounds, and I'm not trying to sound like I'm sexist. It's just that people are that way. And, you know, I started thinking about that. Like, is there going to be a point where other writers that are coming through are going to kind of swoop in and start doing the educating, which I'm fine with. Like, I'm not the type of person that wants to hoard all of it. If there's a new wave of amazing people, I welcome that. And so I think part of me had been thinking that, like, what's my next phase? But it's interesting being forced through this process of being more at home and starting to do more one-on-one private instruction. It's actually made me more motivated to continue my business, because I think that I'm getting the opportunity to really understand the impact I'm making individually. And I think the bigger classes were great, that I could spread the love and impact, you know, a large group of riders. But I actually didn't have huge takeaways from those like I'm getting now with this private instruction. And so I feel like now I'm seeing more of the impact I can make than I've ever seen before. So I'm I want to reinvent a little bit of the things I'm doing with my coaching. But so I think I'm more motivated now than I was before.
That's really cool. Dang, well, I'll tell you, for me, like, I would love to learn from a 50-year-old girl. I think that'd be great. That's so cool. You know, one thing I've kind of detected, you know, through some of these conversations is, you know, the people who are already kind of self-reflective or reconsidering things and always willing to take things apart and see if you can put them back together in a different way. We were kind of prepped for everything being kind of, you know, what a lot of people feel like things have been turned upside down. But if you're always turning things around, it just seems like things were a little bit different, and you just kind of have to adjust to it.
You know, I've personally been faced with many challenges in my life. Maybe this is a very different type of challenge, but I think that I kind of like the struggle a little bit. You know, some people, maybe they like easy street. I kind of like to have to work for stuff. And, you know, I almost sometimes feel like I'll jack crap up for myself just because I want to work hard. I don't want the easy road. And I've noticed I've made a lot of kind of crappy choices in my life because I almost feel guilty for having such a good life. So the struggle, I kind of like it.
I have a lot of similarities there too. If I can if I can connect it to like being on the trail, you know, I think like as mountain bikers, there is some part of us that is like that. We love, like, we hate flat tires, but we kind of love them too. Like when it's, we love them when it's somebody else's, and we get to like, you get to like get your kid out and you get the little like bacon and you do the whole thing, and like, because that's what you take pictures of and take video of, and you're like, yeah, and we sealed the tire and we got back, you know, and you love those stories where you had to use a tire plug, you had to use your quick link, you had your master link, you had to zip tie something together, and like those are the rides you remember. And I think we all
and I always feel so badass when I pull that stuff out. I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to get the tire off, and I'm like using my hands, and I just always feel like, yes, I still can do this. Yeah, totally. People that love mountain biking, they typically kind of like to suffer. You know, a lot of us, and I see it a lot because now I've met a lot of people this year specifically. And I've noticed that mountain biking is such a stress release. And, you know, it's interesting. I used to own a retail business. I had it for almost 9 years. And in 2010, we were having kind of a tough year. And I decided I was going to come back and race downhill that year. Now I had been retired for 8 full years.
Wow.
And I was, you know, 8 full years of not racing downhill at all. I maybe rode my bike 5 or 6 times a year. And then I was like, I'm going to race 5 major races in the world championships in 2010, which I did. I accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish. It was amazing. I ate that downhill world championships. It was amazing. But the thing was that when I was training, it was 5 hours a week. I gave myself 5 hours a week. But when I was training, I didn't think once about the stress I was under or my bills or nothing, because I was suffering, right? I was putting myself in a place that nothing else mattered at that moment. And that's what I love about mountain biking. And I feel like so many of us, even now, I think that's probably maybe why people are riding more, because there's an outlet here that it's tough to get. Like running is just, it's not fun. I've been running a lot and it's just hard. Like the second you start striding, you're suffering the whole time you're running. But with mountain biking, you know, you suffer and then you get this downhill where you're like, yes, I'm on the roller coaster. And you're just so pumped, you know, and for those riders that are still afraid of the downhill, when they get comfortable on the downhill, then they get that exhilaration of the suffering, right? You get both back and forth. Mountain biking is just, I seriously don't know if there's anything better than mountain biking in the whole wide world. I just think it's amazing.
Heck yeah. So thank you, Leigh.
You're welcome.
Thanks for doing this. Thanks for taking the time and chatting with me and sharing your experience.
Absolutely.
Next up is Eric from BCpov. Eric has a rad YouTube channel about living in a van with his wife, Yuka. Yuka also has a YouTube channel. We pick up the conversation at the point where Eric and I were talking about when we first met back in February here in Southern California, and how the pandemic started affecting their van life, and even some of the benefits that came out of that change. Mask came off and the pins came out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a long recovery. Yeah, I was still coming back from that when you guys had come out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's kind of why I was a bit tentative while we were riding. There was a lot of things I didn't do because like my hand and wrist didn't really work yet.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Yeah.
So you guys, that was like right before things. When were you out here in Southern California? Do you remember?
Probably like February, I think.
February, right? Okay.
Or maybe late January, February. Yeah. And it was I think we had definitely been hearing about COVID, but but no, everybody, like after our ride, we still went to the restaurant together and all that. And I don't think anybody was concerned about it yet
Right.
at that point. So yeah.
Yeah. So when did it really start like affecting your plans and outlook?
When I think the biggest, I'm not sure what order things went in, but the two biggest things so far that affected us was up here in Canada, they put in like travel restrictions. So we basically weren't really supposed to move outside of one spot, I guess, even though we live in a van. So, and then the other one is we had planned to go to Alaska last summer, and basically they closed the borders, and that wasn't going to happen anymore. So, which wasn't such a terrible thing because BC riding in the summer is amazing. They, on the same note, they did lift restrictions like 2 months later. So we did get most of our summer to be able to go ride and stuff. So
nice.
Yeah.
Did you have to do anything in particular? Did you need to like get back across the border or anything like in your van?
No. Yeah. It was funny. Like we pretty much crossed the border, and maybe a couple of days later, I went back down because as Canadians, we ship stuff just right to the border and then drive down and pick it up.
Okay.
Like to the American side. And at that point, the Americans were like, the American customs, I overheard them saying, yeah, they're going to close the border. And I was like, what? Really? And they're like, yeah, it sounds like it's going to happen. And I confirmed it with the Canadian side on the way home. And yeah, so it was on our way back, it was fine. But we did have some friends that they were in Mexico, and I was kind of like messaging them like they're Canadian. And I'm like, you should probably at least get to the States because the Americans might close the border to Mexico, and you're going to be stuck in Mexico. So yeah, they crossed the border and then basically drove straight back to Canada.
Wow.
But, yeah.
So like, how has things changed? How have things changed for you? Like with the pandemic?
Well, since like normally we'd like in the winter, we'd be driving south right now, or our original plans were actually go to New Zealand, but New Zealand's like one of the most locked down countries in the world right now. So in terms of being able to visit. So, so now we're stuck in Canada, and as you know, Canada is quite a bit colder than America, much of America. So luckily where we are, like we're in Squamish right now. So it's actually fairly mild winter, but it's pretty cold. Like it doesn't really go above 8 Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but, and it rains quite often in this part of the world. So yeah, it's, so obviously, right now you can see I'm sitting in a place. Luckily we have a place to house sit for the winter. And that's been fantastic because van life is great when you can travel. So van life is great when you can travel, but it's really terrible when you can't move and it's cold out and it's raining all the time. Like it's not fun at all. So it's we're pretty fortunate to be able to get this place for the winter, and without much cost to us. So,
well, it's interesting because, that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you and get you on this was because you do live a different life than a lot of us live. You guys you have van life, and normally you're traveling around and it's going to affect you very differently. Because people will talk about like how, well, I've really learned to I've started meditating recently or whatever because I'm home much more now. And I assumed, it would hit you guys pretty differently than most people who are normally living in a house.
I've gained weight because I live in a house. Actually, well, that's a benefit. Yuka's cooking like crazy because we have this place and baking, and she's like, we have all these appliances now, basically that the van doesn't have, unlimited power and water. So, yeah. I guess that's an upside, but to be honest, I'd rather be traveling somewhere down south right now. But yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to jump in here real quick because Eric thought of another benefit.
Hey, Alan, I was actually thinking about the questions you had for me about the pandemic and whether any positives came out of it. And actually, one came to mind. I got to work or build a brand new trail out here in BC, and it's actually been really rewarding, and I'm pretty stoked to be working on it. I'm still working on it now, but yeah, it's been great. And then actually the other thing that I remembered was that we got to ride all summer with our friends Antoine and Isabel. They're also van lifers, so we were traveling around all summer with them in our vans. And we probably wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for the pandemic.
And last but not least is my buddy, Dr. Jason Richardson. He is a former pro BMX racer and now a doctor of psychology, performance coach for executives, entrepreneurs, and athletes. He and I, as you might have guessed, discussed how self-reflection can really pay dividends in times like we've had this last year.
And then little by little, the events weren't going to happen. I was supposed to go to a Supercross event, a BMX Supercross event in Manchester. Mm-hmm. And so that was and all of us were pretty much thinking, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. There's no way it's not going to happen. It's going to happen. And then it ain't happening. And then you think, okay, one race, one event, and then my couple riders called me, hey, do you think the Olympics? I'm like, the Olympics?
It's the Olympics.
It's the Olympics. There's too much money in it. I'm sure they'll find a way. They didn't find a way. I think if and when it happens next year, it might be done more NBA style. Yeah, bubble style. Hey, that's a good one. Bubble style. Anyway, so it just kind of gradually started to put the sticks in the spokes, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, boom, not a twig, it's an actual stick. You're actually gonna go over the bars this time.
Yeah. That was Sedona for me, like, because I was at the Sedona Mountain Bike Festival, and people were talking about COVID then. People were all like, it was funny because we were all like crowded in together, but you would still elbow. You wouldn't do a fist bump. You would elbow.
And then again, but that was in that eerie stage. It was kind of coming, but everyone was still, I'll call it denial. I think, not in like a bad hubris way, but just a not knowing this reality kind of way. Denial. So
I'm fully guilty of that. Like when the Sedona, I was planning on Sedona, I had bought the tickets, and then everything was happening we were hearing the news of the pandemic, and I was thinking, like, should I go? Like, should I do this thing? And I was like, well, if stuff is going to get shut down, I'm going to this. I'm going to go do this. And then hopefully, it won't get shut down. And then maybe stuff will get shut down after that. But yeah. So it was interesting, though, coming back. And then as things were getting locked down, right? Like you couldn't go into restaurants. Suddenly everybody was outside. Suddenly everybody was on the trails. It was crazy.
Yeah, even my kids, they have bikes, but not because they're necessarily bikers. They have bikes because I like bikes. They were going to the hill, and the hill is by the park, by our house, and the hill is this fire road, access road, dirt road, and then it kind of levels off, and there's some power lines, and they were taking the shovel. They were taking the shovel. I'm like, what's happening? So they would go to build jumps at the hill. And then the other neighbor kids would congregate at the hill. It's pretty 1986 for a little bit there.
I was just going to say.
It was awesome. It was awesome. So the kids would go out. But then there was this weird piece where it's like, don't share the shovel. Don't ride anyone else's bike. I mean, it just... Because the news was coming at us, and some of it was good, some of it was verified, maybe, some of it was not. and then obviously just natural fear and different people's levels of tolerances. Although deep down I was like, all right, kids are outside playing and doing stuff. And it was an interesting, that I still think we're going to see benefits of that. I think when I look at it from, or I don't know if I can look at it from my kids' perspective, but when I can only imagine that when my kids, 15 and, or we'll just say, I'll just round up 16 and 12 respectively, are 35 or 45, what they'll look back on this time and say, oh, remember when we had to whatever, fill in the blank. And it'll be a pretty interesting, and I don't want to diminish it or over dramatize it, but this is this generation's thing.
How do you feel it like affects like trail etiquette now? Do you think there's been much shift?
There's a lot of people learning it and relearning it. I'll put it that way. There's a lot of people learning and relearning trail etiquette. And two, there's just more people out there. Forget new people on bikes. Because I think people on bikes learn pretty quickly. You just have to be cool. And I say you as in a biker, I say you as in a dog walker, I say you as in a hiker, and it has been good. I personally always make it a point to say, please, thank you, hi, good morning, good afternoon, give the space if I can. Have
you experienced like additional stresses? You talked a little bit about your family, but and it sounds like your career may have been kind of impacted a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was looking at possibly the best year professionally, between speaking and working with private clients and corporate training. I went to China in October.
And you went to, why were you in China again?
China was a BMX Freestyle World Cup.
Okay.
And then, so working with a couple riders there. And then November, pretty slow, but then the new year starts early on an Olympic year because they like to get everything in. So things were just really ramping up. It was really exciting. And then it just, breaks. 4-piston, 220 rotors, just stop.
So what have you been doing to kind of like manage that?
Well, it's interesting. So everything got really slow, and I think people got scared to spend anything because there was this uncertainty. What's going to happen? How's it going to happen? Maybe this can happen. Maybe it can't. Then things started to cancel just because they couldn't happen. And then I think people started to become accustomed to the way the mask working from home shift. And then in an interesting way, business picked up a pretty good deal on the personal side and executive coaching side, because guess what? Like I said, this virus exposes everything. So a lot of the questions that I ask in general, what are you doing with yourself? Why are you doing it? What does this mean? Is this what you wanted to do when you set out to do it? Was this what you thought it would be? Oh, and by the way, are you happy? Are you contributing? So these questions are percolating in a lot of people now naturally, because we're in a time of uncertainty, and we've all been forced in some way, shape, or form to do things a bit differently. And if you're going to make a shift into something else, now might be the time. So from that regard, then there was this kind of uptick of personal clients hopping on. So that's been good. And I decided to dive into getting more training for myself, just to keep my skills sharp. And between that and riding, it's actually been pretty enjoyable. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I mean, there is a heaviness to all of this for sure. And I was just explaining how our family's kind of like, we feel like we have, let's say cabin fever, but just some kind of fever of sorts, where it's just like, all right, we're ready to.
There's like a fatigue. It's
we're ready to just like fully breathe easily, right?
Yeah.
That said, you know, I like that lunchtime everyone's at the house. I like that. Yeah, there's certain things. I mean, I personally I'm in better shape than I was, which is I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I think that's been kind of a theme that I've been hearing is that self-reflection is, you know, that's kind of for a lot of people that is part of what has occurred due to the pandemic.
yeah.
One thing I did want to ask is there, do you have like a bike shop that you go to, like that's your go-to bike shop?
My garage.
Your garage, okay.
So no, hear me out. So that's the other thing. It started a bit last year. I learned how to build wheels.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I did it for my son because I figured I know a lot of people in the bike world. You could probably make a decent amount of money just building their wheels. So we took it upon ourselves to figure it out. And anyways, we're not wheel smiths per se, but if you give us the right spoke lengths and the right stuff, you'll get a good 3-cross wheel.
Okay.
Anyways, so it started with that, and then the neighborhood kids started riding, and everyone. And I have this thing where I want people to enjoy riding bikes, and I want, and I believe that the reason why people stop is because their bikes tend to be crappy or fall apart, and they're not maintained. That's part of it, right? Bad equipment. The other piece is I think I enjoy working on bikes sometimes.
Oh, that's right.
Although
that's
today or the other day I did give my tire to someone else to set me up tubeless because I just was not the valve stem was not cooperating with me. That said, yeah, it's my garage. So I've figured out shifting, and the only thing I don't do is bleed SRAM brakes.
Oh, I can do that.
Yeah, I'll do Shimano, but the SRAM, yeah, I'm not touching a SRAM reverb C-post, and I'm not touching, and I don't do the SRAM brakes. But so that's my shop. I do have some favorite shops, but I love bike shops. I just love walking in. I like the smell of the rubber tires and the you know.
I don't want to make you like have to like leave anybody out. I was just looking at like, do you like know of any bike shops that have been like handling the pandemic? Like how are they handling it?
Well, I can tell you it's that. I mean, the one shop that was the closest to my house was a Bicycle Warehouse. And they have a few of those in California, Southern California, pretty decent network. I mean, but the one by my house closed down, which was a bummer. I mean, that would be my go-to shop because it was right there. And then the next go-to shop, which is doing really well, is called El Camino Bike Shop in Encinitas. And they're more of a neighborhoody shop. So I love that shop too. And
yeah. How they changed their processes? Like,
yes.
you know,
so with El Camino, you don't just walk in. There's a table. The door's open, but there's a table there. And then they ask. There was one point where they ask, "What are you looking for?" And then someone will go kind of shop for you and bring it to the table. And I think now it's like a velvet rope style. It's like someone comes out and then you can there's only a certain amount of people in the shop.
Right.
I think it just depends. But the hours, I don't know if the hours have changed too much.
Yeah. So let me ask you this then. It's kind of the next step, or the kind of wrap up question. Like, what is it like? What are a couple of things that you are like really looking forward to?
You know that scene in Cars? You know that movie Cars, the first movie, Lightning McQueen. Anyways, I watch it because I have a kid. But anyways, there's something about hitting the road to go do your thing that I love. And whether it's a road trip or a plane trip, I love home, but I also love getting in the wind. I love the adventure. And I really haven't been on an adventure in a minute. So that's where I'm. Yeah, So those are the things that I'm missing. But I miss getting in the wind, man. And I miss hanging with people. I mean, there's some trips that I have, as soon as I'm able, that I'm just going to go do, because there's people that I owe, like I need to see these people, and it's just that's where I'm going. Yeah,
I totally feel you on that. I so feel you on that. Yeah. Well, hey man, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this and sharing some of your experience.
It's always a pleasure. I really appreciate you tolerating my tangents.
Oh, I knew what I was getting into.
Okay.
We talked before. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you so much. All right, crew. Hope you dug this. Hit that like button. Check to see if you're subscribed. If you are not, hit that subscribe button and I'll show up in your feed every week. And with that, have a rad day.